Hey everybody, I have a returning guest, Julie Carcamo of J. Carcamo and Associates. She's the president, the chief brand strategist, and she's even written a book. And Julia has been here before, and I'm so happy that she's back here again for a special edition of Email Never Sleeps. We're talking a lot about casino and digital marketing. Julia, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about sort of your background for those that don't know who you are and a little bit about some of your boot camps that you have coming up.
Well, thank you for having me again. I am a casino marketer. I like to always say by trade and by passion.
Yeah,
I work out of New Orleans, where I was born and raised, and I get the pleasure of working with casinos around the country on a variety of projects, but also training casino marketers.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And full disclosure, everybody. So I spent quite a few hours researching our talk today. And look, she's got a TikTok channel, Julia, a TikTok channel. And I got to say, for people like me, right? I have digital ADD. I like watching short video content because I can get a lot out of it. I highly encourage everybody to kind of go and find her. Some of the posts she has on there are very inspiring, very educational, and in some of the comments, I'll read that. Plus, she also has a little bit of personal stuff about her three dogs, Smokey the Bandit and Racer, and it's really cute. And there's lots of cool material. But I wanted to start out, Julia. You're making your way around some of the conferences this year, right? And you talk to a lot of casino marketers. You think about some of the things that you talk about in trends, both in social, digital itself, and in email. I'm curious, what are some of those conversations like? What are people talking about?
Oh, wow. Um, you know, so there's operators and what they're talking about, and a lot of the vendors talking about, right? But I feel like we're still struggling as an industry with retention, employee retention, and customer retention at that.
Mhm.
Um, I think that we are competing in a different manner before. I mean, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we
Yeah.
were competing against the casino that was also in driving distance, that maybe was sending a better offer or a more attractive offer, be that whatever it may be. But I
Mhm.
think now our competition is just very different. I mean, I remember, because I've been in the industry this long,
Yeah.
when some properties lived in a monopoly. They were the only casino for miles around. And so
Mhm.
they really felt like they had no competition. But in fact, they actually always had competition, right? Because that gambling dollar is our recreational spending. And that recreational spending could be movies, it could be bowling, it could be the latest fun center, it could be the 3 different subscriptions to streaming that I have, and always have access to the latest best movies right from the comfort of my couch. So
Yeah.
I think that rethinking how we compete and what we're competing against and what we are offering beyond the slot floor is
Mhm.
has been a lot of discussion points.
And one of the things that I'm going to reference your TikTok channel just because I think, one of the things that you talked a lot about, or one of the TikToks that kind of struck my fancy was this thing about emotional territory,
Yeah.
right? And I'd love for you to just give a brief explanation of how you define emotional territory. And then I want to kind of get into the social aspect for just a second. So define emotional territory for everybody.
So I'm going to go a little back in time,
Okay.
because this was always, that emotional sensibility has always been a foundation for the brand work that I've either been a part of or have worked on.
Mhm.
Um, and it's part of that traditional brand ladder, right? Functional benefits are table stakes. They're at the bottom of this ladder, and we know them, right? Every casino has slot machines. Yeah, some are class 2, some are class 3. Some people don't even know the difference, and they don't really care as long as they're
Mhm.
getting some money out of it.
Right.
um we have hotels or not, we have restaurants or not, these are all just these functional benefits. But as you work through a brand process and you go up that sort of brand ladder, you start to think about, well, this is what we have. What is it meaning to the customer, not to
Mhm.
us, but to the
Mhm.
customer? And then what's that emotional trigger that we've always worked on way back when God bless him, Gary Loveman
Mhm.
originally thought, Harrah's was operating in all these jurisdictions. How can we create a space that we can own? And
Yeah.
that was actually my very first foray into brand work and that research and finding that emotional territory. So I think that when you think about the casinos around the country, especially when they're in really competitive markets, meaning that there's 2, 3, 4, sometimes 9
Mhm.
actors in walking distance. And I know
Sure.
of two markets that are like that. Um, you have to think, what am I offering somebody beyond that slot machine? Because everybody's going to go to G2E, and everybody's going to make sure that they talk to all the big manufacturers and get the best slot machine. And, 6, 7 months down the line, everybody's going to have that slot machine in your market. What's
Right.
going to differentiate you? And I think that is that emotional connection you can make. And that happens through the experience that people have. I've been
Mhm.
really experience focused when I talk to marketers about how are we creating an experience that delights guests
Mhm.
and that keeps them talking, that they tell their friends and family about.
Yeah. Completely agree. You know what? I'm in the Chicagoland area, and I frequently go to Michigan. And on my way to Michigan, there's always the Hard Rock in northern Indiana, and then as we cross over into Michigan, there's other sort of casinos in the area. And recently, a new casino opened up. I don't know, probably I would say in the southern part of Illinois, almost bordering that of Indiana. And they had been building the structure for so long, and I was looking for an escape, a way to get out, just for a night. My wife was having guests over, her sister and stuff. And so I looked into this new casino because it was new and I wanted to kind of go and experience it. The thing is, they hadn't opened up their hotel as of yet, but what they were promoting in the way that I felt was it just wasn't a casino, right? It had much more to offer, and they had these huge billboards on this road that's just very well traveled into Indiana and Michigan. And then I went to the site, and the site was very clear about how it laid out. And I never actually made it there. I decided to do something different, but the way that they were positioning, not just, hey, we're a casino and we've got all the latest slot machines, they were positioning a lot more for somebody to
Yeah.
have me spend my play money, right?
Yeah.
So to speak. And I think, you mentioned that a little bit, right? As a homebody like myself, right? Like there's some times where I don't want to go out and do specific things. You also mentioned something in one of your TikTok videos that I found really interesting. You said, I want you to market like it's Mardi Gras. And it's like a big party, right? And I
Right.
thought the way I kind of took that back was, as we think about this, how do we position ourselves as casinos, or as marketers, or whatever we're trying to do to get people to come in? Um, why Mardi Gras? Is that just because of your local New Orleans influence, or is it that's just something you sort of came up with?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, it
Okay.
definitely is a part. I mean, I've got Mardi Gras happenings sitting here all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that it's also there's a thing about Mardi Gras that never makes the news. It's never
Yeah.
what you see, when
Mhm.
all the national networks are showing Mardi Gras, they're showing Bourbon Street, right? I mean,
Mhm.
let's face it, it is the thing that people know the most about. But when you
Yeah.
really think about Mardi Gras,
Yeah.
and Mardi Gras as a brand,
Mhm. Mhm.
never does any marketing. It's everybody else
Yeah.
that does the marketing, right? There's
Yeah.
always this sense of community.
Yeah.
People really own this event in
Yeah.
their hearts. And there's tradition and there are rituals. And that really kind of mirrors a lot of the same things that casino guests do.
Mhm.
Casino customers go to their favorite machine as soon as they come through the door. In
Right.
many cases, you'll see they'll have, good luck charms, or they'll go through some process. There's a casino in California that also does a great job on their TikToks. Well, a lot of casinos are doing a great job on their TikToks,
Yeah.
but they've had a couple of TikToks where they show people going through their rituals and their process. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's just kind of how people are connected to
Mhm.
Mardi Gras. So
Mhm.
why don't we find ways for people to connect to our brands and really start to tell us
Yeah.
what the marketing should be, what we should be offering, what we should be doing, because that just gets people more involved and more connected to your brand.
There's a casino in California, and I want to jump to social here for a minute. There's a casino in California that kind of plays in a lot of different social channels, but what they do is they make it very cohesive, right? So whatever channel you're on, Insta, Facebook, X, TikTok, they kind of do the same thing, or they repeat the videos based off of their demographics and what they're doing. But one of the things that I started noticing is that they started introducing, I guess the term is micro influencers, people that are local to that area, people that we would know about. And, my research, they're like, hey, create a partnership with micro influencers. And I'm curious, in working with some of your clients or in some of the conferences that you're hearing, is there trepidation to work with micro influencers? Are they seeing the return of working with micro influencers in social? I'm just curious because I don't know I don't know the back end. Like, is it ROI positive?
So I know that I've worked with some clients that work with I wouldn't call them micro influencers, but they're certainly not the headliner
Right.
influencer, right? And
Mhm.
in the casino space, we do have kind of a pantheon now of influencers. I
Mhm.
think that headliner, micro, nano, macro, whatever term you want to use for their
Right.
audience size, I
Yeah.
think that the return comes when you build a relationship with that influencer, and that influencer really
Mhm.
understands your brand and your facility and is a partner with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think that the return, you could easily say, should I spend $60,000 on this influencer?
Mhm.
How much am I going to get back? Well, what if I spend not much, but giving somebody free play and,
Right.
maybe a shirt, but
Right.
they are proud as can be to be one of
Mhm.
your influencers and they start spreading your news.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that it's hard to really kind of measure a return on investment with influencers. Now,
Yeah.
I do say that there are ways to measure it, because when you work with influencers, if you can create events that are trackable, you can then see, if you created new revenue, did you bring incremental visits? You can start to see some of that. So I
Mhm.
always tell casinos that when you are working with an influencer, try to create some kind of event that you can track. And you
Mhm.
can then say, this influencer brought us more business. This influencer brought us an additional visit from this demographic, and it was worth it to us. So I
Mhm.
think that return on investment, it's like advertising too. You put out an ad on a 10 o'clock news,
Right.
it's hard to measure that return on investment unless you're doing direct response and you have somebody calling a phone number, right?
But yeah, but I also think too, like, isn't it based off of the demographics and the frequency of people that come into on property, right? And they may or may not feel influenced by
Yeah.
influencers, if that's a term, right? I've often, and maybe it's just because I'm showing my age here, or because I'm a little bit different than a lot of other marketers, I believe real people, right? Like you had mentioned earlier, right? Like, do we spend $60,000 on an influencer, or do we create a series of short pieces of content, whether it's short-term videos or posts or whatever, where I can make this visual and emotional connection to that individual, excuse me, and say, hey, I can relate to that
Yep.
person rather than some massive influencer that I really don't care about anyway, or that just doesn't float my boat. And so I would encourage, and maybe I'd love whether you agree or disagree, wouldn't it be prudent to say, okay, well, if we're going to go on this short form content route, right, in social, to run a test, right, of an influencer versus a humanized, real sort of influencer, so to speak, right, and see if we can measure that out, and the spend versus the return. And that's a hard thing to do, but it also is a good, valuable lesson to learn.
I think that casinos have a lot of opportunity ahead with user generated content
Mm-hmm.
and also employee advocacy.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Holy.
Now I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. Now, the industry, and I love this industry,
Yeah.
is slower on the uptake with those things. I mean, it took us a while to get really used to using social media as a
Mhm.
channel,
Yeah.
and then to use it properly
Yeah.
took more time. And so I
Yeah.
think that we're heading in that direction. I think that um, lots of properties have shown success in moving in this direction. And so, the bigger properties get a chance to do it first. They've got a little bit of a bigger budget. They've got, more people,
Mhm.
managing a user generated content program and employee advocacy takes a body. So
Yeah.
if we're struggling with retaining employees, then now we're adding more to it. So there's a
Right.
little give and take going on, but there's definitely opportunity for that.
But isn't it true that, I mean, everyone views social as, oh, it should be fun and it should be easy to do, and we can create all this content, lickety split, and throw it out there, and we're going to see marginal success. It's not work, right? Like it's not, you just can't hire some social strategist and think that you're just going to put this stuff out there. And when I was at my last casino conference, there was a hand raised, and kudos to this individual. She asked the question. She's like, "How do I even get started
Mhm.
in this?" Right? And there was this huge fear that if they go down this route, right, like they're going to get stuck in this rut, and then they feel like they got to consistently make it because it's not easy to make content. You know it, and I know it, right? I mean, there's this whole notion. And so when you talk to a casino marketer and they say, "Hey, I want to drop right into this social strategy," like what are some of the guidelines that you give people to do this?
You know what? It's funny you asked because I actually had a call with somebody that I'm working through this with them. I have a weekly call with them, and a lot of it is experimentation. A
Okay.
lot of it is I will often start people with just do your own social media. Like,
Mhm.
I think that when we started with this person, the
Mhm.
holidays were happening. I said, take a bunch of pictures from the holiday and drop them into a CapCut template and see what happens, right? There are a
Yep.
lot of tools. So uh, through through boot camp and through just conversations, we try to
Mhm.
expose people to a lot of tools. And I
Mhm.
just like to have people start to experiment and then start to look at the analytics. And
Mhm.
what are they telling us? What's important? What are we going to start to measure? What's going to, because that metric has to be something that's going to move the needle at the casino.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the general manager is not going to really see a lot of value in it.
Right.
Right. And so,
Right.
where do we find that bridge? And it's different for each property. It
Mhm.
could be likes, it could be shares, it could be saves, it could be DMs, right? So
Mhm.
we have to
Mhm.
find that for each property. And then we
Mhm.
just start the process of like figuring out what's working, what's not. Just a
Yeah.
lot of experimentation. And then I'm always a proponent of, and I would love to say that I came up with this process, but it has been shared with me by two or three smarter people. But
Yeah.
this whole batching process of shooting
Mhm.
a bunch of things or a few things and then editing them and then
Mhm.
getting them staged for publication
Sure.
really has saved me a lot of time.
Well, one of the things that I've preached in my career was segmentation, right? And we start thinking about social campaigns and segmenting social campaigns like we do all these digital things, and another trend I saw was, hey, segment, right? Whether it's by player type, whether it's by entertainment seekers or spa seekers. When you're at the stage of starting out or getting into social media marketing for your casino, when do you cross that chasm and say it's time to start segmenting our content, or do you?
So I think part of the experimentation, part of the results you get is an insight into like what kinds of the kind of content that's resonating per channel starts to tell you what kind of segment that is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Which is why while you may start posting the same thing to all your channels at one time, I mean, you were
Hmm.
experimenting, right? So you
Yeah.
put it all out there and you start to see, and there have been times when we've seen, Twitter or X was, definitely a place where there was more sports conversation. So if you had a sports
Right.
book, that was a really great place to put your content as opposed to putting it on Instagram, which is just so much more visual, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
your food and beverage outlets, I mean, if you can get some good shots,
Absolutely.
if you can get, the chef doing a few recipes and showing people how to make something that
Yeah.
plays well on both Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. So,
Mhm.
that's the segmentation you really look at in
Yeah.
terms of social media. It's the kind of content that resonates, starts to tell you the kind of customer that might be.
But also too, you can't be everything to everybody, right? You got to sort of find your niche, so to
Mhm.
speak, right? And if it's event driven things, if it's holidays or sporting events or pop culture or concerts or whatever, don't feel like you have to be that one casino that does it all, right? Because
Right.
then you're, I'll use my son's term, then you're a try hard, right? Like you're looking so much to try to do everything. And, people of the younger generation will probably just sort of laugh that off and say, you can't be the one thing to everybody. So what else are people talking about at some of these conferences that you've attended this year?
Oh my God, there is so much AI conversation going on that
Uh, yeah.
it's
But so that is a huge thing for me is AI and weeding through all of that and these conversations. But realistically, what are people wanting to do with AI? Is there like some general thing, whether it's stuff that's been around for a while, or are they talking about like cutting edge AI driven campaigns? Like it's not going to take over the world, right? And certainly not going to take over casinos. But you said they're slow on the uptake, right? So what are the conversations on this AI thing in the
I
casino?
think a lot of it. So I just was at the Indian Gaming Association conference. For them, the discussion
Mhm.
of AI and technology it has a lot to do with sovereignty. So
Okay.
that's very specific, right into that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
I think as a general, people are looking at AI and thinking, how can I do my marketing better, faster,
Hmm.
stronger, right? How can
Right.
I be the $6 million man? For those of you who remember that
Yes,
of
I know.
marketing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that part of that goes back to um, really understanding what you can do and when you can
Mhm.
do it. I think to your point, some of it is stuff that's been around, although now it's being packaged differently. Predictive
Absolutely.
analytics, right? Being able to
Mhm.
look at our segments and say, you know what? I can drive X more visits from this group because
Mhm.
the analytics have told me that.
Right.
But
Right.
if you think about small regional casinos, they don't often have the benefit of a data scientist, right?
Right.
So if AI can help them be data scientists, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah. Right. It'd
Yeah.
be amazing.
Yeah.
Right. I always caution people when we start talking about AI to first of all take a look at what you have. Everyone wants to do it. I think everyone has the ability to do it, but at what stage are you at in
Mhm.
order to implement it? And will you divert the whole marketing team or everybody to just focus in on AI and forget about other things that really can work? And then don't sort of jump ahead, right? There's lots of tools out there that can do, that can do content, that can create specific things for content and test it. But it's certainly not. It'll make your life easier, but it's not going to make your life easier to implement or to start it out or figure it out like what you're going to do. And the last thing you don't want it to become is, I used to call it shelfware, right? Where you're just like, I'm so frustrated with what AI has promised and it's not delivering because we are all in this culture of immediacy. We want to see this return really, really quickly.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think that the best benefit that I have found with
yeah,
AI is jump starting, right?
yeah.
How many times do you look at a blank piece of paper or a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet and
Hmm.
you just don't even know where to begin?
Hmm.
And I was at Social Media Marketing World, and somebody, I wish I could remember the name, recommended putting a sticky note that said, how can
Yeah.
AI help me with this? My monitor.
Yeah, totally. Right.
So it just sort of says when I'm blocked, you
Yeah.
know what? I have a partner in this and
Yeah.
I can leverage that. And I
Yeah.
think that if we as marketers and casino marketers had that kind of sticky note and said, you know what, let me just get a jump start on this,
Hmm.
I never advocate taking things purely straight out of AI and using them and implementing them, but it
Yeah.
gives you a really good start. And the more you use it, the more you learn the prompting, the art and science of prompting, I would like to call it. The
Yeah.
more you realize how much better you can get at getting closer to where you're, and now all of a sudden,
Hmm.
got an admin or an intern that's really smart and really
Yeah.
helpful, right?
Yeah. 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 Um, switch subject. I want to switch subjects to budgeting for a quick second. I went my last conference. I sat and had lunch with a group of individuals, and we were kind of talking about budgeting and how much they allocate, not necessarily in dollars and cents, but time and budget and resources to marketing in and itself. And you said we're going through a transformative change, right? And it's much different than it was 5 or 6 years ago in the beginning. And I have seen other verticals, other industries pull back their marketing budgets for some really weird reason. And they haven't felt that impact yet. As you're sort of going to these conferences, are you finding that casino marketers' budgets are kind of flat? Are they increasing? And where do you think they're going to allocate it? Because we can read any article we want, right, about what people are doing or how their budgets are being allocated. But until I actually talk to somebody, I'd love to know what if you've had those discussions with people about budgets.
So I think there's a little bit of a mixed bag right now.
Okay.
I think that as non-politically as I can possibly say this,
No.
there are changes happening and we don't know how that's going to impact consumer confidence and consumer spending.
Mm-hmm.
And so some properties are taking a very cautious approach and saying, you know what, let's try to stay flat.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had growth for the last few years, so
Mm-hmm.
it may be time
Mm-hmm.
to plateau. So
Yeah.
some of them are taking that path. Some of them have started projects, big projects that are going to require more marketing. So their
Mm-hmm.
marketing budgets are naturally going to be higher,
Yeah.
but we're trying to be very, temper that with a little
Yeah.
bit cautious. I
Yeah.
don't know that anybody is increasing their budgets just because, hey, let's try to make more money next year than this year. I
Right.
think that we would all like to do that. I think some properties, some markets will be resilient and they'll be able to make more money.
Yeah.
Some of them are finding that they're spending their dollars a little bit more wisely. And so their budgets may shrink, but it really is because they're becoming more effective. A lot of
Right.
properties are moving off of traditional, which I don't advocate,
Mm-hmm.
but because digital is a little bit more measurable and a little bit more like what we're used to when it comes to database marketing,
Yeah.
feels a little bit more comfortable. I always
Mhm.
advocate a balance strategy. That's my
Mhm.
2 cents on the topic. I have
Agreed.
more if you want to hear it, but
Yeah.
I think that more properties are just trying to figure out, you know what? We need, especially when you think about tribal operations.
Mhm.
My friend said this a couple of times and it really has stuck with me. Tribal casino operations are designed to last 100 years. They're not in the business of creating these properties so that eventually they get 8 times EBITDA and sell it
Right.
and go off to, the Cayman Islands to retire.
Right. Right.
These operations are built and designed to help the tribal nation thrive.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so when you think about that, it's hard to say, let's pull back.
Yeah.
So you have to constantly be pushing that
Mhm.
marketing envelope. How do we create this revenue? Because in the end, it
Right.
helps a bigger cause.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting point. I never really even
Yeah.
thought about that, right? You see this, and it's been a while since I've been to a tribal casino, but when I was there, the feel was much different in a very good way, right? And the things that they do. I want to hit on two more topics real quick, because I know that you've attended these conferences, and I work fractionally for iPost, and we're an ESP and an email service provider. But there's this whole notion of the integration of email, right? Whether it's behavioral based triggered campaigns or mass marketing emails and mobile first or whatever we wanted to talk about. Are casino marketers talking more about how they integrate these channels together, whether it's SEO, whether it's social, whether it's print, whether it's email? Because I haven't seen or heard a lot about it. And that, as an email marketer at heart, is like, golly, there's such a huge opportunity to mesh these channels together. And I know it's hard. It's not easy. But is there this push for that, or do they sort of treat it as this is my silo and I play well in my silo?
I think that there's still a lot of silo
Hmm.
discussions. I do know of one operator in particular that really is undergoing this omni-channel transformation, and they are asking themselves, how
Hmm.
do we continue a conversation online and offline and then through our channels in a consistent manner, because this tells the customer we know them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That takes a lot of integration. It takes a
Hmm.
lot of thought and a lot of resources. Not all operators is designed to do that. And I'm telling you, integration is the bane of everyone's existence.
Yep.
I had a person who mentioned not being satisfied with a particular technology they were using. And I remember thinking, well, that's odd, because I know other clients that use this technology and they're very happy with it. And I think the problem with it was with the integration,
Hmm. Yeah.
integration and last year at a conference, John Akers, who is a legend in the casino industry, he said something in his keynote, and he said, as operators, we need to go to our providers and tell them what we need instead of
Hmm.
the other way around. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, sure, that's easy to say if you're one of the big conglomerates that has
Yeah.
multiple properties.
Right.
If you're the property that's got 3 operations in the middle of Iowa, or
Hmm.
one-off sprinkled, in Oklahoma,
Hmm.
how do you make your voice heard
Right.
to these providers? And
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
that there's, again, I keep seeing, like, how do we coalesce this? How do we become,
Yeah.
that voice together that speaks for the smaller operators? I think that the integration is going to require people listening to the smaller operators.
Right. And the conversations that I've had with customers and with marketers in itself is there's this whole notion of, well, everyone preaches that integration should be easy and fun, and it's a snap of the fingers and wham big, there's some API and everything's integrated and hooray, we can do it in a week. That is not true.
Right.
I think any vendors that talk about, hey, integration is simple and easy have never actually done that, right? Because
Yeah.
they look at everybody and say, well, we've done this before and this is our average time. And I always say exercise caution when talking about integration,
Yeah.
because in some cases it could get really funky really quick. And then guess what? Everyone's pissed at one another, right?
Yes.
And then you're not a true partner to that organization, or not. One other thing, look, you've got these casino marketing boot camps. I've presented at one when I was in New Orleans. It was phenomenal. The group of marketers were fantastic. There was a lot of interaction. You've got a couple coming up this year, and I'd love for you to tell a little bit about. You said there's a Midwest and I think a Northwest one. Tell us the dates and what if someone's listening wants to attend, what are they going to get out of these things?
So our Midwest one
Hmm.
is in August
Okay.
5th and 6th. We're going to be
Okay.
in Tulsa at River Spirit, which is a phenomenally beautiful property.
Nice.
And we're going to, this one is a little bit different than our typical format, because what we're doing with this one is actually planning. So it's a lot about strategy and tactically
Yeah.
creating a 90-day marketing plan and calendar. What's
Yeah.
going to happen on Friday? What's going to happen on Saturday? What's going to happen on Tuesday? What's going to happen? And
Mhm.
how are we going to get to our revenue goal for that month based on this calendar?
But one thing you're not mentioning, Julia, that this is interactive,
Oh
right? This
yeah,
is not a bunch of people standing up and
no,
preaching to you guys how to do it, right? This is hey, this is a working conference,
this
right?
one in particular
Yeah,
is we're taking sort of this executive development style approach.
yeah,
So it's a
yeah,
lot of work for this one.
yeah,
This one's going to be the heavy lifter. There's going to be team coaches
nice.
to help, guide them along. There's going to be team time during the day and at night because reports are going to be due the next morning. So
Yeah,
it's going to be really exciting, but so productive.
yeah,
Our September event, which is at Muckleshoot, another beautiful casino,
yeah.
Auburn, Washington, which is just in the area of Seattle,
Hmm.
um, which has Mount Rainier in the background. So what a view, right?
Nice.
Is going to be a little bit more like what you attended, where it is
Mhm.
still sessions that are super interactive, that each session has 2 or 3 different stopping points where there's work that's done either as a group or individually.
Mhm.
Some of the coaches have people report back on their process and what they did. Some of them just do it from the table. It really varies, but one of the things that I've always loved about boot camp is that not only is it interactive for the attendees, but it's interactive for the coaches. Because I'm
Yeah,
sure you saw coaches, even though, Nathan Green is talking about music in your casino, he's
yeah,
getting around and helping you with database or with advertising.
sure,
I'm
sure.
helping with email and
Yeah,
whatever topic is coming up. As
yeah,
these groups start to work together, the coaches just start circulating and start offering really a lot of insight, because as vendors, we get exposed to so many properties and
yeah,
we can bring that to the table. And Casino Marketing Bootcamp has just been, this is our 7th year.
yeah.
I am so beyond thrilled at
Mm.
how this has developed. And the comments that we get back from casinos are
Yeah,
always that it's been super productive and unlike anything they've ever attended. And
yeah.
that's my goal, right? To make it memorable, make it something that they want to come back to,
Hmm.
for them to know that it's something that's super unique.
Two things I think that I took away from being a coach at your marketing boot camp in New Orleans was that it's an intimate setting, right?
Yes.
There's not like 500 or 5,000 people there, which makes a little bit more, hey, we're going to work together,
Yeah.
right? Number one, and it's actual work. It's not like you can just kind of show up to a session and then kind of blow out and do some work, right? Or go back to your hotel room or whatever. Like this is stuff for you to learn, right? So that's why the word boot camp really sort of helps. And then the other thing is that there's this camaraderie. At least when I was up there and we were talking through with a lot of the marketers who attended, is everyone has kind of around the same problems or challenges, and there was a working through of the group,
Yeah.
right? And it's spirited interaction of wanting to help one another.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. So to me, it's not a conference, it's not a seminar. It truly is something I think that's
Yeah.
interactive. And I think that's where I think folks attending these things is really mandatory. So where does somebody find information on that, Julia? Just we'll put it
Casino,
up on the screen.
casinomarketingbootcamp.com.
CasinoMarketingBootcamp.com.
I should tell you that I had
Yeah.
somebody the year that you were a coach that came to me at the end and said, boy, I thought I was just gonna like sit back in the back of the room and stayed on my computer and check
Yeah.
emails. He goes, but I never stopped working in these 3 days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was great for me. And
Yeah.
to your point, the groups are small.
Hmm.
We are playing around with maybe adding a handful more people, attendees,
Yeah.
but in order for it to be really interactive and hands-on and really be
Mhm.
focused on you, it can't be a big room.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's topics for everybody, right? Like you said, there's this planning one in Tulsa, and this other one is probably focused more on marketing, email, social, things of that
Yes.
nature, right? And so
The
what
one in the one in September is going to be focused on digital and technology.
perfect.
I'm actually speaking to somebody about maybe figuring out a session where we can help marketers create a roadmap for integrations.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Look, we could probably talk for a long time, but I'm also cognizant of people's attention span. right? We've touched on a lot of stuff. I definitely am going to have you back as probably a three-peat, Julia, because you're so full of knowledge, and you're just awesome, right? Like, I mean, you're a personable person. I love, guys, seriously, even if you're not on TikTok, get on TikTok and join our channel, right? Like, for some reason, I don't know, I'm just like the TikTok guy, right? And it's interesting. My wife's always like, why do you keep sending me TikToks at night, right? Type of stuff. But it's fun. And especially if you're into this sort of thing, you work for a casino, whether you're new or whether you've got years and years of experience, I think there's lessons to be learned. They're short, right? I think the longest one I saw was like a minute and a half or something like that, right? Which is perfect for me, from my mind. So look, email never sleeps is changing. Email never sleeps is sort of evolving, just like with any industry. We wanted to really focus in the areas for iPost this year, which is casinos and franchises, and we wanted to have guests on our sessions who really know a lot. And Julia, thank you so much for being a part of this series again and again. And we're going to have you on it. And folks, if you have got questions, reach out to her, reach out to me. I am more than happy to answer them. And thank you again for everyone's attention. And we'll hopefully see you next time on Email Never Sleeps. Thanks again, everybody, and thanks again, Julia.
Thank you.